Video Collaboration, Group 2. On December 7, 1941, Japanese carrier aircraft attacked Pearl Harbor in the U.S. territory of Hawaii, sinking, damaging, and destroying a large portion of the U.S. fleet and almost 200 aircraft. Almost 2,500 people lost their lives in the attack. The Japanese lost only 29 aircraft, with 55 killed. On December 8th, war was declared, and the United States officially joined the world conflict. It was now imperative for the United States to get up to speed rapidly to expand and grow the military and infrastructure needed to carry out defense of the country. Midway and the Codebreakers. Midway Atoll is situated midway between Japan and the Hawaiian Islands. The Battle of Midway turned the war in the U.S.'s favor. The U.S., however, had vital intelligence from codebreakers that gave them a strategic advantage in winning the battle. Navy codebreaker Joe Rochefort is credited with providing the intelligence that led to the Midway victory. Japan wanted to draw the U.S. Pacific Fleet out into a climactic battle so that it would be destroyed. This would offset all the U.S. capital ships that would be deployed in 1943. The Japanese fleet was headed for an attack at AF. Rochefort and his team thought it might be Midway, but needed to be sure. Rochefort's team had the Midway base radio a message in English that the atoll was short on water as a way to trick the Japanese. A Japanese unit picked up the message and relayed that AF needed water. Rochefort's team broke the code, and the U.S. trick worked. The Battle of Midway from June 3rd through 6, 1942 was the largest clash of the Japanese and the United States Navy to date. The Japanese plans for destroying the U.S. fleet almost worked, except for 10 minutes in which 10 bombs from dive bombers destroyed 4 aircraft carriers, including the Hiryu. The U.S. victory over the Japanese in the air-sea battle ensured that the United States would not be neutralized, and the remainder of the war would be defensive for the Japanese. The benefit of decoded Japanese naval messages allowed the United States to be prepared well in advance and made victory possible. Women codebreakers were an integral part of the intelligence gathering process, including Midway. The military had an urgent need for intelligence workers, and it tapped highly educated women. More than 10,000 women, many of them teachers, from around the country became codebreakers. The Navy recruited from elite colleges. The Army recruited mostly women teachers. The Navy and Army constantly competed. Arlington Hall went from a girls' school to the headquarters of the U.S. Army's Signal Intelligence Service, near Washington, D.C. The women recruits couldn't be engaged or married. They also had to be able to keep a secret. They developed a very close bond amongst them. There were thousands of code girls. One of the code breakers was Anne Cara Christie. She grew up in Bronxville, was recruited by the Army out of Russell Sage, a women's college in Troy, New York. Cara Christie later rose to become the first female deputy director of the National Security Agency. Cara Christie and her Arlington Hall team broke many codes, including the Japanese address codes. These messages carried crucial Japanese troop information. MacArthur's headquarters is as good a picture of the Japanese military setup as he had of his own, said Solomon Kolbach, a mathematician in the Army intelligence operation. He went on, "That outfit was 100% female. There were only girls working on that address system." Using code breakers, the U.S. pushed ahead in the Pacific. The Guadalcanal Campaign. Japan's Imperial Navy wanted to control these sea lanes in order to delay the Allied advance into the Japanese outer island defensive perimeter and allow Japanese forces additional time to strengthen their island defenses. Admiral Ernest King, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Fleet, wanted to gain the strategic initiative against Japan. The Japanese loss of 4 of its 6 fleet aircraft carriers at Midway forced it on the strategic defensive. Guadalcanal Island is the largest island of the country of the Solomon Islands in the Pacific Ocean. The island is over 2,000 square miles and is volcanic in origin, with a mountainous spine, the Cabo Ridge. Many short, rapid streams tumble from the wooded mountains to the coast. American planners had several concerns regarding this campaign. There was not enough time to plan. The Japanese Navy still outnumbered the American Pacific Fleet. General Alexander Vandegrift's 1st Marine Division was not fully trained, and Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher's naval task force defending the beachhead would be vulnerable to Japanese attacks. Despite these reservations, King ordered the operation to proceed. For supplies, ships were loaded to maximize space, however, rather than combat loaded at stateside ports. Combat loading focused on the most valuable supplies and equipment being the first to offload, whereas maximizing space loading did not take the efficiency into account. Ships had to be manually unloaded and then combat loaded in New Zealand, resulting in a delay in the landings until August 7, 1942. Additionally, only a fraction of supplies and no heavy equipment were unloaded before the transport fleet withdrew. Captured Japanese supplies, particularly food, supplemented the marine supplies. Guadalcanal was lightly defended, primarily by Japanese engineers who were building an airfield when the Americans arrived. Once ashore, the Marines quickly overran the Japanese defenders and seized control of this airfield, which they renamed Henderson Field. Guadalcanal would see almost continuous naval and air battles fought to gain control of the operational area. The crucial ground battles were fought over control of Henderson Field. With the airfield under American control, Japanese planes were forced to fly to the limits of their operating range. The Japanese tried to regain possession of Henderson through a series of failed, costly attacks on places such as Edson's Ridge and Alligator Creek. Guadalcanal was the first Allied offensive against the Empire of Japan. Subsequently, the United States would retain the strategic initiative in the Pacific throughout the entire war. Guadalcanal also provided a needed morale boost to the American domestic public. The outpouring of capital ships starting in 1943 would ensure that the U.S. Pacific Fleet would no longer fight outnumbered. The fierce fighting at Guadalcanal also gave an indication on how the Pacific War would be fought. It would be a brutal, close-range, attritional fight with quarter rarely given by either side. Violence would escalate to an unimaginable level, given that Japan relied on its martial spirit to accept death over defeat. The United States military learned much from the battles of Midway and Guadalcanal, gaining their first victories at tremendous cost of life. The Guadalcanal victory justified continued U.S. offensive operations in the Pacific, despite the Europe First policy. The war was far from over.